I would like to make acknowledgement of special guests we have joining us this evening. Firstly, Kiya-san, the Consul General of Japan in Sydney. Welcome, Consul General, to you. The Honourable Stuart Ayres, MP, Minister for Jobs, Investment, Tourism and Western Sydney, and our keynote speaker for tonight. We also have Mr. Tim Reardon, the Secretary of the New South Wales Department of Premier and Cabinet, and representing the Premier tonight. Ms. Kim Curtin, the Deputy Secretary of Trade, Tourism, Innovation and Precincts. Dr. Jennifer Westacott, AO, the Chair of the Western Parkland City Board and the Chief Executive of the Business Council of Australia. And a special welcome to Harada-san, the Secretary General of the Japan Chamber of Commerce and Industry. The agenda tonight is in front of you on the slide. We're going to hear initially from Kiya-san, the Consul General, then Minister Ayres, and then Tim-san, Kim-san, and Jennifer-san. So could I, without further ado, invite the Consul General to make some introductory remarks. Next slide, please. Over to you, Consul.
Yes. Thank you very much for the introduction. I'm Kiya Masahiko. It is a great pleasure for me to be invited to make a few remarks at the outset of today's webinar. こんばんは。よろしくお願いします。First and foremost, I'd like to extend my greatest appreciation to the New South Wales Government for organizing today's webinar and to the distinguished speakers for spending time with us. I still remember warm reception extended by the New South Wales Government to JCCI Economic Mission in February this year, here in Sydney. Since COVID-19 response was strengthened from mid-March, there has been tremendous developments in the situation as well as policies in New South Wales. Today's webinar is an ideal opportunity to directly provide the latest update to the Japanese audience so that quality investment by Japanese companies with technology and innovation would be further promoted, not only for the peoples of our two countries, but also for the planet. As this webinar is targeted to the Japanese audience, allow me to speak briefly in the Japanese language. 本日はご多忙の中、ニューサウスウェール州ビジネスウェビナーにご参加いただきましてどうもありがとうございます。本年2月に日本商工会議所の経済ミッションの皆様が当地シドニーを訪問された後、新型コロナウイルス対策が本格化し、世界の状況が大きく変化しました。しかし、当地オーストラリア、特にニューサウスウェール州は、生命と生計、ライフとライブリフッドの双方を守る政策を果敢に展開しまして、成果を収めています。政府投資はさらに前倒し加速され、西シドニーやシドニー中心部への新たな企業や機関の進出も次々と発表されています。シドニー大都市圏の開発は日本にとってオーストラリア連邦州政府の強いコミットメント、先進国の安定性、経済成長、大規模性を兼ね備えた投資機会です。また、スマート、デジタル、次世代、先端、高齢化対応といった日本の強みを生かしつつ、多文化社会の中で多様性を取り込むことができる場でもあります。今、コロナ対策のため、1号館の往来は制限されていますが、幸い、1号旅行館には官民とも長年の深い交流と信頼関係があります。それを基盤にビジネスを進めることができると思っています。本日のウェビナーを最大限に活用いただければ幸いです。当館も西シドニー開発や日本とニューサウスウェール州の関係についての 最新資料を当館のホームページにアップしておりますので、ご活用いただければ幸いです。今後とも皆様のニューサウスウェール州におけるビジネスが最大限に発展するよう最大限に努力することをお約束申し上げまして、私からの挨拶とさせていただきます。Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Consul General, for your kind words. Could I now invite the Minister to speak and give us our keynote speech tonight?
Thanks, Jeffrey. It's a wonderful opportunity to speak to everyone online, particularly to the Consul General, who just gave some very warm remarks about the strength of the New South Wales and Japanese relationship. It seems like only yesterday that I saw some people who are on this call, but members of the Japanese delegation led by Dr. Mamora in the New South Wales Parliament only in February, which was a lifetime ago in this world that we are living in at the moment, but seems like only yesterday for me. And it's a continuation of this incredibly strong relationship that the state of New South Wales and Japan has had for many, many years, and continues through the leadership that we have at the moment through our Premier Gladys Berejiklian. And whilst we might all be facing some challenges that even a few months ago we never thought we would have to deal with the COVID-19 crisis that has swept across the world, I think it's an important and opportune time to remind ourselves that out of crises come opportunities, particularly for those businesses that are looking to play the long game, to invest with partners that also want to play the long game and continue to leverage from good friendships. And that's something that New South Wales and Japan have shared for many, many a decade. It's an incredibly exciting time here in New South Wales, even though we are battling, like the rest of the world, the COVID-19 crisis. We have put ourselves in very strong economic position to be able to fight off the coronavirus, but we've also not lost any speed in the work that we're doing around strengthening the New South Wales economy. And I just wanted to take the time that I have on the call before some of my colleagues, the Secretary of Premier and Cabinet, Tim Reardon, the head of our Business Council, and also the leader of our Western Sydney and Aerotropolis Authority, Jennifer Westacott, and a strong supporter of mine, the Deputy Secretary of Treasury in New South Wales, Kim Curtin, take you through their remarks. I think I've got a first-class team working for me here in New South Wales, but the key message to all of the people on the call today is that that team is there to work for you as well and create some fantastic opportunities for Japan to continue to invest in New South Wales. As we've seen, health is a renewed focus for everyone right across the world, and the same exists here in New South Wales. We have an incredibly exciting precinct in the centre of the metropolitan area of Sydney, the Westmead Health and Innovation Precinct, with the largest public and private hospital combined in one location as a precinct that we are looking to grow. We've got a strong focus around biomedicine and a strong focus around research and development. We're currently working on a partnership with the oldest university in Australia, Sydney University, to create its key second campus in Australia at that location, and really driving out of its long history of being a world leader in medical research. I think the opportunities that will come out of this precinct with a strong focus around health, research and development and biomedicines is definitely something for businesses that are focused on that particular area to keep focused on and watch with interest. And I know that our trade and investment teams will be talking about Westmead, which is quite close to an area called Parramatta, many of you may have heard about. It's also a historical site in Sydney with a lot of colonial or heritage buildings, which we will repurpose as part of this particular precinct. So it's a wonderful blend of old and new Sydney, the past and the future, and will be a fantastic precinct with a strong focus around health and biomedicines. The other areas that we've made great progress since I last spoke to many of you has been the area around Central Station in the heart of the Sydney CBD, where we've launched globally our new Tech Central. And Tech Central Apologies for the bells. It is a parliamentary sitting day here. The Tech Central precinct, we've had a very strong global interest, but most importantly led by one of the largest Australian technology firms in Atlassian, a billion-dollar NASDAQ-listed company, has decided to make its global headquarters here in Sydney. It's a fantastic endorsement of Sydney as a technology and engineering and science-focused city. To have one of those global leading businesses like Atlassian to be able to declare Sydney as its home. One of the things that Atlassian's investors and owners told me was the strength of the ecosystem that exists here in Sydney was a core part of their decision to call Sydney their home. And that's because that ecosystem is showing great strength in being able to develop new startup businesses, new technology businesses, and continuing to deliver strong and skilled workforce to those businesses that are emerging out of the Sydney startup ecosystem. That combined with Westmead are two new precincts which we are really driving forward as strong economic and investment opportunities here in New South Wales. The third of the key Sydney precincts that I wanted to raise with everyone tonight is an update on our Aerotropolis precinct. Now, this is an area that I know Jeff and the New South Wales team and the Australian Austrade team have been talking about a lot in Japan, and there are a number of Japanese businesses who have already partnered with the New South Wales government in the Aerotropolis. It's continued to go from strength to strength. In the last couple of months, the New South Wales government and the federal government committed $11 billion to build a new metro rail line between an existing rail line and the Aerotropolis. It's one of the largest rail projects in Australia today and will be for the next 7 or 8 years. It comes with 5 new train stations and a lot of fantastic land use opportunities that come along with those new railway station locations. Alongside the new railway, the CSIRO, Australia's Science and Research Institute, a world leader in science, research and development, and particularly translational research, has decided to consolidate all of its Sydney locations and Sydney activities in the Aerotropolis in a new world-class science and research and development building that will be the home of CSIRO in Sydney. They've been in another location for almost 40 years, and this is a new future for CSIRO and Australia's leading science institute to come to the Aerotropolis. And I think the most important message for the people that are on the call today is that the scientists and the researchers at CSIRO have decided that Western Sydney, and particularly the Aerotropolis, is the future when it comes to advanced manufacturing and translational research into business and improving people's daily lives. And if they're thinking that, then that's really reinforcing the investment opportunities that exist in Western Sydney. Obviously, the key themes that bring all 3 of these precincts together is a strong smart cities theme, the ability to deliver infrastructure across the city, whether that be rail infrastructure, road infrastructure, water, electricity, and other utilities. There's a very strong focus around making Sydney the smartest city that it can possibly be. Further afield in regional New South Wales, I think one of the most exciting developments that's taking place in the state of New South Wales at the moment is the establishment of regional renewable energy zones, which have been launched by our Energy and Environment Minister, Matt Keane, along with our Deputy Premier, who's also our Minister for Regional New South Wales. We fundamentally believe that Australia can become a green energy superpower globally, and we want New South Wales to be at the forefront of that evolution here across our nation. And our renewable energy zones should also be viewed through the lens of investment energy zones as well. They're great opportunity to take advantage of green bonds that are being issued by New South Wales out into the marketplace, but also to invest in fantastic renewable energy generation. And there's a strong focus around making sure that generation is backed up by smart transmission that comes back to the strong population centres that exist around New South Wales. We also believe that the opportunities to continue to make our environment cleaner is supported by the ability to adopt more green energy across the New South Wales energy system. And this is backed up also by our work in our existing energy sources, but particularly the emerging opportunities that exist around gas as a transitional energy source for New South Wales. So as you can see, whilst the state of New South Wales and Australia has been meeting the challenges that have been presented by COVID-19, and we, like most other nations around the world, have seen economic contraction, the state of New South Wales has always kept a strong eye to the future. We recognise that precinct-based economic development is going to be absolutely critical in attracting new forms of employment and new forms of investment into New South Wales. We know that advanced manufacturing, science and knowledge-based jobs are going to be absolutely crucial for our city, and we want to make sure that we're investing our infrastructure dollars to support that. And so the New South Wales government has renewed its commitment to infrastructure, with now investing over $100 billion in infrastructure over the next 4 years, and that's an important part of our COVID response. It's an incredibly exciting time to be involved in these projects here in New South Wales. So whether it's Sydney, Western Sydney or regional New South Wales, or whether it's science, technology, biomedicine or infrastructure, there are plenty of opportunities to be investing your precious and hard-earned dollars into strong growth economies here in Sydney. When you partner that with the rule of law and the strong friendship that New South Wales, Australia has had with Japan over the many, many decades, I think whilst we are being challenged like we haven't been challenged for many, many years, there are still many, many bright spots on the future horizon. And as long as we stay focused on those, we'll continue to build on this fantastic friendship. We'll continue to find sound investments for each other, and we'll continue to improve the lives of the citizens both in Japan and in New South Wales. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. I do hope you find the rest of tonight's presentation enjoyable and informative. We've got a very good team presenting to you, and it is a wonderful opportunity to go through and explore the rest of those investment chances and opportunities that exist here in New South Wales. So Jeff, I'm going to throw back to you now, and thanks very much for organising.
Thank you, Minister, and what a wonderful friend he is of Japan, and what a great minister to work with on jobs, investment, tourism and Western Sydney. Before I hand over to Mr. Tim Reardon, the Secretary of the Department of Premier and Cabinet, can I just make it clear to everybody online tonight that we are videoing and recording our proceedings, and this will be available to all participants following tonight. So now it gives me great pleasure to introduce Tim San to speak from his position. Welcome, Tim.
There we go.
Oh, I can hear Tim. Tim, can you hear me?
I'm back on now.
Okay. Welcome, Tim.
Thank you very much. We'll go again. Thank you, Mr. Roberts, for that warm introduction. May I just give my acknowledgements to Minister Ayres for his opening comments, to Jennifer Westacott, AO, who is the Chair of the Western Sydney Aerotropolis Authority, to the Japanese Consul General here in Sydney for his warm remarks, and the Secretary General of the JCCI, who's also on this webinar tonight. And to all of you who have come along to listen to us and get an update on what we're doing here in New South Wales. Next slide. Can I just make a comment around where we were in February when Dr. Mamura led the wonderful delegation to New South Wales. It was a fantastic opportunity to connect on where we were up to then. As the Minister said, it's only a few short months ago, but it feels like longer than that. They are challenging times at the moment, but we've been getting on with things. Dr. Mamura, when he came, actually had the opportunity to attend our New South Wales Parliament, and he had a great opportunity in connection with our Premier at that time, which was a fantastic thing for him to do. It really reinforced the strong connections between New South Wales and Japan than they'd ever been before. And I'd like to just acknowledge our foundation partners in the Western Sydney Aerotropolis, being Sumitomo Mitsui Banking Corporation, Mitsubishi Heavy Industries, Hitachi, Urban Renaissance Agency, and NEC. You're all warmly welcome, as are all the other Japanese organisations on this webcast. On behalf of the Premier, she sends her warmest regards. I was with her less than an hour ago. She asked me to pass on the fact that she acknowledges that the Tokyo Olympics should be underway now, and we all wish that we were watching or observing, or indeed being in Tokyo and observing close at hand in person for the Olympics. And we also, both myself and the Premier, want to say that we look forward to those Olympics this time next year, and wish you all well in those endeavours. And we'll understand that they'll be a wonderful event when they come around. The key messages for me is the strength of our partnership is that we are truly still open for business in New South Wales, as the Minister pointed out. And I just want to go through a couple of short comments on things that we're thinking about and the drive we will have to respond to COVID. So let me talk about the Premier's 6-point plan for recovery here in New South Wales. That 6-point plan has only just been released. Thank you. Next one, if you wouldn't mind. That 6-point plan has only been released in the last 2 weeks, and it's very important. And the first point in that plan is infrastructure and infrastructure delivery has been a hallmark of this government for the last 10 years, and it will be one of the key approaches to how we recover out of COVID. It is now $100 billion as a pipeline. Last time we updated you, it was about $97 billion. We've added another $3 billion. That's over the next 4 years. It is quite significant on a worldwide scale. The Minister mentioned the metro line for the Western Sydney Airport. We've talked to you about the planning for that for some time. It is now going to go into the delivery phase later on this year, and looking towards opening in the second half of this decade. There are a whole range of other major projects that we've talked to you about at broad level, but it's an opportunity to let you know that they are significant, and there are very, very large amounts of those projects, both in the urban area and indeed in regional New South Wales. That continues to be an economic strength for this state. The second is talking about planning reforms and precincts. And I've talked to you about some of your marvellous precincts in Tokyo, Yokohama, Tsukuba to the north. We are now taking a lot of the thinking and great work that foundation partners and others out of the Japanese business sector and government, the Urban Renaissance Agency, have taught us about precinct development and innovation in precinct development. We are driving that more than ever because we see it as a jobs growth area like never before. And the Premier wanted that to be one of these 6 priorities. The third is education and jobs for the future, and very much a jobs-led recovery, using skills, but jobs-led and industry-led recovery. And I won't talk too much about that because I know the chair of the Western City Aerotropolis Authority, Jennifer Westacott, is very passionate about that, and we'll talk to you about that further. But very much We are putting large investments into that, both at the New South Wales level and the federal level, and partnering on driving jobs. There'll be hundreds of thousands of people retrained in New South Wales, jobs growth in areas that Japanese companies have been fantastic at for a long time. We want you to partner with us on those things. The fourth is digitisation, telehealth and cybersecurity. There are many, many areas that we've learnt lessons of over the last 4 or 5 months that would have otherwise taken us 5 to 10 years to learn. Whether it's virtual healthcare in our hospital settings, virtual education for hundreds of thousands of students at the primary, secondary and tertiary levels. Even our judicial system is holding all of their court processes virtually, and many other areas of our economy have moved forward rapidly. Our customer focus and digital is now a hallmark of the government, and we want to grow that and grow that with great partners. The fifth is advanced manufacturing, something that we want to partner with Japanese companies for because you're so good at it. And the Aerotropolis we've talked about quite a bit in terms of opportunities for advanced manufacturing. But just to give you a small example, during the pandemic, worldwide, we've all had to look at our supply chains and our supply lines for key equipment. And one of those key pieces of equipment in healthcare are ventilators. Ventilators that go into intensive care units to keep people healthy, to keep people alive. And we've had to tilt and make sure that we start thinking about our supply lines for advanced manufacturing in those areas. So out of crisis comes a great opportunity, and there are many more in that area. And the sixth and an important one for Japan-Australia relationships is that the national and state level relationships have never been dealt with more effectively than in the last 6 months. So we've talked to you about the Aerotropolis being a federal, state and local government delivered precinct. During this COVID crisis, we have come together as a national and New South Wales government, forming a national cabinet to drive state and federal relations like never before. Prime Minister Morrison has been communicating with Prime Minister Abe over the last few weeks, learning lessons from what is working in your country, sharing what's happening and working in our country. And with New South Wales being the largest part of the Australian economy, we are certainly the beneficiary of hearing what's happening in Japan and also providing our advice about what's happening here. That speed of decision making, that speed of information flow has been like never before, and the crisis has forced us to partner and to collaborate more than ever, and that is only a good thing. The last thing I want to talk about is just to reinforce some of the comments that the Minister made about precincts and those lighthouse precincts. The Western Sydney Aerotropolis we've talked to you about quite a bit, and again, we are getting on with things. We are putting in the enabling infrastructure at a very large scale. The funding and investment since we spoke to you last, just in February, has been quite dramatic, and they are on the actions we said we would get on with, and we are getting on with them. We are now bringing anchor tenants and foundation partners into the Aerotropolis to set up. We are now getting on with other areas such as digital technology and 5G. We are thinking about other areas such as renewables, and all of that's happening in the Aerotropolis, and we've spoken to you about it several times. But the Technology and Innovation Precinct in this eastern city around our central station, our main train station, is quite dramatically large and is moving very fast. Similar to Westmead and Parramatta, the medical and health research area there is moving quite fast. The enabling infrastructure, even since we spoke to you last, more investment is going in there out of that $100 billion infrastructure pipeline, and they are moving along very, very well. And we're happy to update or take questions on any specific area that you might have. But one we've spoken to a few of you about, but not everyone, is regional New South Wales opportunities. We have very large precincts in regional New South Wales where freight and logistics, considering new forms of renewable energy, considering things such as waste to energy, like never before, and people have been providing us with proposals, with suggestions about innovations in those type of areas. In small cities such as Parkes in the middle of New South Wales, which has rail connections growing between Melbourne, Sydney, Perth and Brisbane, the first time that has ever happened. Parkes is a centroid of that area, and we are growing a small precinct around there of very, very strong freight and logistics. Similar in a southern regional city of Wagga, we're also building quite a significant precinct along similar lines. So there are opportunities across the state of New South Wales. I trust you get a feel from my comments that we are very much focused on our task. COVID-19 has been an unfortunate pandemic. It has been a large distraction, and we've had to apply ourselves very, very seriously to that. We believe we've managed it fairly effectively, and we only look on to see how a strong partner such as Japan has also managed it effectively. And I think there are lessons to learn out of that, just about resilience, about learning from your friends and sharing information during even these difficult times. But for us, it is now accelerating ourselves onto economic recovery. And I've outlined those 6 points for the Premier's Road to Recovery, our economic recovery plan, and the government and the public service here in New South Wales and all of our partners in the private sector are very much focused on getting on with it. I'll leave my comments there, Jeff. It's very, very good to see everyone again, and I apologise for a little bit of bumpiness on my slides, but I hope I got my message across. Over to you, Jeff.
Thank you, Tim San. That was very significant. Can I now welcome Ms. Kim Curtin. Kim is the Deputy Secretary in the New South Wales Treasury. She is the Deputy Secretary for Jobs, Investment, Tourism and Precincts. And Kim is here representing the Treasurer of New South Wales, and tonight going to talk to us about the overall financial position of the New South Wales Government and in her area of jobs, investment and tourism. Kim, you're very welcome.
Thank you, Jeff, and wonderful to see everyone here. So thank you for joining us today. I would like to acknowledge the Consul General, Kia-san, and also Mr. Harada, the Secretary General of the Japan Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Thank you all for joining us. And as Jeff-san said, I'm here on behalf of the Treasurer, who would like to send you his best wishes as well, and for a very important partnership that we have with Japan. I think the key for me is the key message is just, as you heard when Dr. Mamura was here earlier in the year, New South Wales started our journey through COVID with a very strong position. The state had a very strong economic position. We were strongly in surplus with great financial discipline and a great plans for how we were going to continue to grow the economy and continue to grow jobs in New South Wales. And I'd like to talk to you a little bit about what we have been doing during COVID to make sure that we're keeping the economy as strong as possible. So that it's not coming up. Here we go. So I won't talk through all of these. There's a lot of information on these slides. So I'll just talk to you about a few of the highlights. But some of the keys from us was, as Tim San mentioned just recently, having National Cabinet and our Cabinet are coming together very quickly to make quick decisions and to be able to be on the front foot to make sure that we are working to do the best that we can for keeping everyone in the state healthy, but also keeping the economy on track as much as possible has been really important. So the speed and confidence of the support measures that we have put in place have been possible mostly due to that really strong economic position we were in at the start of this journey. It's also been fueled by the very ambitious economic blueprint, which we spoke to you about earlier in the year, and the vision of becoming Australia's first $1 trillion state by 2030. We are still focused on that. Obviously, COVID has given us some setbacks, as every economy in the world, but we believe New South Wales is in a very strong position to recover quickly. We know there are still challenges, but working with partners like yourselves and Japan generally to work forward is very important to the way that we think about our recovery. So just a couple of the measures we put in place in the $13.6 billion stimulus that we've put forward. Obviously, a lot of funding has gone to health, to boost health, the response, but also in terms of medical research, as well as a $1 billion fund put towards what we've called the Working for New South Wales Fund. So really focused on employment opportunities and jobs growth. Everywhere in the world has had challenges with employment levels, and we're very much focused on how we were continuing to grow jobs in New South Wales. Right from the very beginning, New South Wales, as everyone, had a focus of responding to the crisis, but also very quickly, the New South Wales government asked us to prepare a recovery team and also a reform team. So my team particularly has been focused on recovery and being ready to make sure that at the appropriate time, when it was appropriate from a health perspective, we can quickly look to grow jobs, grow economic development, and grow opportunities for the state. And partnering with some of the wonderful firms we have on the call tonight is exactly the sorts of measures that we want to be doing to continue to grow this state. So I won't go through all of those details there. There's a lot of information, but you can take them away if you'd like to see some more information about some of the work we've been doing around the COVID response. So as I said, we entered the crisis from a position of economic strength. Part of this has been through targeted investment, but also it puts us in a prime position for a dynamic recovery. So we've got a unique opportunity here to lead the way out of the crisis, both for Australia, but even partly for the world. So the stimulus measures and job creating initiatives that New South Wales had in place before, and the visions around the economic blueprint and the Global New South Wales strategy have set us up very well for recovery. As Tim San has said, we still have very big and bold plans. We are not shying away from the challenges that are before us. So our goal is to take the opportunities that are presenting itself from COVID. New South Wales in particular has managed COVID well, as has Japan, and we see this as a great opportunity to partner with other nations to be able to grow the economy here as a safe place to do business and one that is continuing to grow. So we would like to be a role model for recovery. So part of our plan is to make sure that we have the critical is to have support in the right places and to make sure that we have access to that at the right times for our economic recovery. So as you know, real interest rates are already negative. The Reserve Bank has said already that they're not planning on reducing interest rates any further. But as Tim San said, we are continuing to invest in our infrastructure pipeline, where a lot of countries have had to reduce their infrastructure spend because of the impacts of COVID. We've continued to increase and focus on that as part of the economic stimulus and the job creation work that we're doing. And we'll continue to be focused on what we can be doing to encourage the development of our key precincts, development of key industries, and those industries that will be the greatest, fastest growing industries of the future. The economic blueprint released in 2019. I know many of you have seen this previously, so I won't talk too much about this, but just to reiterate that during COVID, we did do a review of the economic blueprint to just test that it is still valid for the way that we are moving forward, and absolutely everyone is agreed that it is still a very valid vision for the state and what we'll be focusing on going forward. And the same goes for Global New South Wales strategy. So as Tim San said, our focus is on growing great places where people want to be, people want to work and live, growing capital investment, making our precincts economically successful and sustainable, and positioning Global New South Wales as the global and national focus for investment in Australia. So Japan is our oldest and dearest trading partner. Today, Japan is actually our largest export market, thanks in part to energy and resources, and also the Japan-Australia Economic Partnership Agreement is further supported through the New South Wales-Tokyo Metropolitan Sister State relationship. So New South Wales has been privileged to be recognised as a safe and profitable place to do business, and have had, I mean, there's some of the names on the screen here now, the fantastic leading Japanese businesses who are here partnering with us in New South Wales. In recent years, we've seen sort of investment move beyond resources as well, and there's into sectors such as financial services, technology, infrastructure, absolutely, renewable energy, food, agribusiness, advanced manufacturing, and healthcare, amongst others. Name some of the names on the screen, like Hitachi, SMBC, NEC, Mitsubishi, Mitsui, Itochu. These are all household names in New South Wales now, and we want to continue partnering with the many organisations on this call this evening. So to ensure we maximise every opportunity available to us, as you know, we developed the Global New South Wales Strategy, which was released at the end of last year. This is still our roadmap to the future and to growing our world-leading industries, creating great places to live and work, and connecting New South Wales to the rest of the world. So as the Minister mentioned, our key precincts of Tech Central, Westmead, Innovation, and the Aerotropolis, as well as those regional activation precincts that Tim-san mentioned. We're absolutely focused on growing New South Wales and growing Sydney to very much be the global city that it is in Australia, and to ensure that it remains Australia's global hub, connected, smart and vibrant. We're very much looking forward to continuing to partner with you. Thank you for your time tonight. Arigatou gozaimashita.
Thank you so much, Kim-san. That was a very good and comprehensive presentation. It now gives me great pleasure to introduce Dr. Jennifer Westacott, AO. Jennifer will be known to many people on the line. She holds two significant positions in relation to this conversation tonight. She is the chair of the Western Parkland City Authority, and she also is the CEO of the Business Council of Australia. Over to you, Jennifer.
Well, thank you, Mr. Roberts, and good evening, everyone. And can I particularly acknowledge the Consul General and thank him for his remarks, the Chamber of Commerce, who we all had the great pleasure of seeing Dr. Mamura here in February in very different times, and of course, a very warm welcome to our partners at the Aerotropolis that Mr. Reardon has gone through. Hitachi, SMBC, Mitsubishi Heavy Industries, and the Urban Renaissance Agency, to name a few. Let me just give first of all, a perspective from my role in the Business Council of Australia about business sentiment in Australia. Obviously, there is much uncertainty, particularly in regard to the economy. And I would say business sentiment is patchy across the economy. There are sectors that remain in trouble: aviation, tourism, hospitality, which have been deeply affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. The government, nationally and at a state level, have been magnificent in providing tax relief and income support measures. They have been very well received, and they have put a floor under the economy and have bolstered confidence, but most importantly, have kept thousands and thousands and thousands of people in jobs. Last week, our National Treasurer released some economic data. One of the most important pieces of information he released was that had the government not introduced the relief packages, another 700,000 people would have lost their jobs. Other sectors of the Australian economy remain extremely strong. They particularly relate to mining and resources, which still enjoy very high commodity prices and high demand. And interestingly, some parts of the retail sector are also doing well. Some of that is driven by the incredible stimulus that the government has put into the economy. But generally, some aspects of retail, particularly large supermarkets and large hardware stores, have been performing extremely well. Manufacturing, one of the decisions that was made in this country, which I think deserves a Nobel Prize, if I may say that, was the decision to only shut down aspects of the economy that were at risk in respect of health. And what that has allowed this economy to do is to continue with broad-scale manufacturing, steel production, mining production, and so on. And that has been a very important part of keeping our economy strong. So I think generally companies are extremely optimistic about our market position, our proximity to Asian markets, the fact that we are a very safe place to do business. Our governments have managed the COVID-19 crisis extremely well. And of course, governments in Australia, particularly in New South Wales, but nationally as well, have got very strong balance sheets. The Australian government has retained its AAA credit rating despite having spent record amounts of money on stimulus. And that gives you a sense of how strong the economy is. We also have extremely strong balance sheets in our banks, our large mining companies, and our large conglomerates such as Wesfarmers, which I am a director of. So I think the news from Australia, if I take a broad view, is very, very positive. And of course, now our horizon turns to how we generate additional growth, and that brings us to the Parkland City. So New South Wales has undergone a lot of change in the last 12 months, but this also creates a platform for the opportunities that Mr. Reardon talked about. And one of the key priorities of the Premier is to make sure that a lot of this extra growth that will be needed to generate extra jobs will be driven by these key places. Cities that are going to be resilient, advanced, inclusive of culture, and offer new ways of working, learning, and harvesting and harnessing local industries. Just to give you a broader context, the Parkland City is one of those places of opportunity. It is the economic powerhouse of Greater Sydney, generating over $56 billion each year, employing 420,000 people. It has a number of really crucial sectors that are of interest to people on the call: manufacturing, freight, logistics, health, agribusiness. It's a very thriving small business sector with expertise in construction, retail, higher education, the arts, recreation, and so on. As Mr. Reardon said, governments have invested massive amounts of money into this region, well over $20 billion. At the heart of the Western Parkland City is the Aerotropolis, and this will be a new smart city which is being planned by industry and by government, and it will be the catalyst for advanced careers, an innovative education model, growing business, sustainable utilities, completely different rethinking of digital networks, all connected by a world-class system of roads and rail. The Minister mentioned the announcement about the $11 billion North-South Rail Precinct. This is the largest, Mr. Roberts will correct me here, the first time the Commonwealth Government has invested in a rail project in Australia, and one of the largest infrastructure projects in Australia's history. Mr. Reardon asked me just to touch on education. We will be delivering the first industry-driven education model where students will work in a foundation partner company and they will get a series of small micro-credentials or modules, if you want to call them that, which will allow employers to pick the courses that people need for the jobs that they need, so that we can have, for the first time ever, industry driving what is studied, how it's studied, and people working and learning at the same time. The Aerotropolis, as many of you know, is built around the new 24/7 Western Sydney International Airport. The Aerotropolis will feature a hub for advanced manufacturing, aerospace, aviation and defence. There will also be an agribusiness precinct for high-tech food production and pharmaceutical manufacturing. There will be a 24/7 global freight and logistic network. It will create more than 200,000 jobs and a tremendous amount of job opportunities in respect of the construction of schools, cultural places and major infrastructure. We have 18 memorandums of understanding in place with national and global industry partners, and they will be involved in co-designing the capital, co-designing the buildings, and co-designing things like the education model. As we take stock of what we have achieved, I thought it would be good to update you on a couple of key developments. The Minister talked about the most significant one more recently, and that is the announcement that the world-renowned CSIRO will relocate 450 of its Sydney-based staff and researchers to a new state-of-the-art purpose-built facility at the heart of the Aerotropolis. You'll notice on screen some of the images of the new facility, and as you can see, we are aiming here for an urban form which is world-class. This is a huge step for the Parkland City because this will make it Australia's leading hub for science, research, innovation, with CSIRO's physics and material sciences, astronomy, information technology, and data research amongst the principal disciplines that they will move into this new purpose-built facility. It will also feature their state-of-the-art laboratories and workshops for hundreds of its skilled workers and scientists. This will be bringing them together on a scale for collaboration that has never been seen before. But most importantly for people on this call, the opportunity of CSIRO locating into the Aerotropolis means an opportunity for CSIRO to work with our foundation partners to drive that collaboration, to drive that centre of growth around advanced manufacturing, research, space, aerospace, and so on. As you know, we have achieved a lot in the last 18 months, a huge amount of activity, and I do want to thank Mr. Sam Sangster for his incredible achievements. We have got to a point where trying to get that place-based approach to growth and harnessing all of the growth opportunities in the Parkland City, Minister Ayres announced on the 18th of July, building on the success of the Aerotropolis Authority, that we would be re-established as a Western Parkland City Authority. This will mean we have a greater capacity to deliver integrated infrastructure, master planning and investment attraction across the whole of the Parkland City. This is one of the fastest growing regions in Australia, and this change that the Minister has announced will mean that we can realise its full potential. I'm very honoured to announce that the Western Parkland City Authority will be headed by Dr. Sarah Hill, who of course many of you would know was the inaugural Chief Executive of the Greater Sydney Commission. Sam Sangster, who is known to many of you, will remain looking after the Aerotropolis core, which of course has reached a point where we now need to execute the implementation of its buildings, of the location of the CSIRO, of getting our advanced manufacturing research facility, and driving our new education model. And he will lead that vital work. I will remain as chair and look forward to continuing to work with you. So in summing up, we remain very committed to working with our foundation partners. This is a project of incredible, not just national, but global significance. And we can't do it without your cooperation. We have now moved to very detailed agreements with many very important global companies. BAE Systems, DB Schenker, GE Additive, Vitex Pharmaceuticals, as well as crucial other government agencies such as the Australian Space Agency. And of course, we continue to build a new education model, as I've described, but also a new education governance model, bringing 4 universities together, the University of Wollongong, the University of Newcastle, the University of New South Wales, and Western Sydney University. So this is an extraordinary opportunity. Our anchor tenants are coming in around 2023. We will have our first building up by then. We're bringing forward our planning and rezoning arrangements. And so this is an opportunity for growth in Southeast Asia, for access to these Asian markets. We're also now starting to reach out to other partners, particularly in financial investment, in logistics, in value-added industries, in supply chain activation, in retail and amenities. So this is a tremendous opportunity for you to make this area your centre for growth in Southeast Asia. This is also why in the next couple of weeks we will be releasing a prospectus detailing opportunities for Japanese investors and businesses, and I look forward to meeting with you again and going through that in detail. That prospectus will give you a complete overview of the opportunities that you can take up and their time frame. But can I thank you for making the time? Can I thank you for your interest in this important project? If we are to deliver the growth that our country needs, that your country needs, so that we can get our world back on track and give people jobs and opportunities and restore confidence in our community, I cannot think of a more important project in the world, if I may say that, than this project for you to become involved with. Thank you, Mr. Roberts.
Thank you, Dr. Westacott. That was an amazing presentation. Look, just before we go, it's very difficult to have questions and answers in this format, but I have been speaking with two of our very important foundation partners, Mr. Hanasawa-san from MHI and Nakakita-san from Hitachi, and they've asked me to ask two questions, one to Dr. Westacott and one to Mr. Reardon. Dr. Westacott first from Hanasawa-san from MHI. I must say congratulations to MHI in launching a rocket to Mars about 2 weeks ago. That's an extraordinary achievement. Dr. Westacott, MHI, and there are a number of other people also interested in this. What do you think is the space and aerospace precinct that will develop around the Aerotropolis? Do you think that's still a focus for you in the authority and for the New South Wales and Australian government?
Yes, very much so. So a couple of things to say about that. Firstly, the Australian Space Agency is committed to locating a lot of its activities in the Aerotropolis. Secondly, we've just recently agreed with the United Kingdom satellite catapult that they will set up their first international presence in the Aerotropolis. And thirdly, and importantly, the CSIRO has a huge space division, and of course they will bring a large chunk of that into the Aerotropolis. So this remains a very important focus. But again, it's about those very specialised aspects of the space industry, which we believe have a tremendous opportunity to create a lot of other economic activity. The other thing that's worth mentioning off the back of that, particularly around defence, but also the kind of defence space interrelationship, is our federal government recently announced its upgraded expenditure forecast for defence in Australia at $270 billion. So this is a huge opportunity to start doing that specialised advanced manufacturing in both space, aerospace and defence, and that remains a very, very major focus of the Aerotropolis.
Thank you, Dr. Westacott. The second question to Mr. Reardon from Nakakita-san is really around infrastructure prioritisation. You talked about the $100 billion infrastructure pipeline over 4 years. Just given the COVID situation, do you expect there will be changes to the prioritisation and how that will play out across Sydney and New South Wales?
Thanks, Mr. Roberts. The short answer is that our investment pipeline and infrastructure pipeline will only accelerate. We will continue to deliver what we have in front of us now, and we'll do even more. The combination of drought, of floods, of bushfires since we spoke to you last, and now COVID-19, one of the key responses and the first point I outlined in that 6-point plan was an economic strength around infrastructure delivery. We will continue to drive that very, very hard. So our priorities have not changed. In fact, since we saw many of you last in February, we have opened the CBD Southeast Light Rail project. It is now running. We have opened an M8 motorway, so one of our most significant motorways and part of the WestConnex scheme of motorways. We will be opening a North Connects motorway towards the north of this city within a very short space of time. We've opened many schools, we've opened several hospitals since we saw you last. So we continue to double down on infrastructure delivery. Probably the biggest change has been that the major projects, the very large projects continue, but there are now a significant amount of smaller economic stimulus programs underway as well. So there are many opportunities for smaller projects. There's also 1.6 billion Australian dollars going towards a digital infrastructure fund that is mainly to upgrade a lot of the digital infrastructure within the New South Wales government. So for government departments to ensure that their customer service around virtual healthcare, virtual education and other areas of supports are second to none. A very large slice of that will go towards cybersecurity, so there are many more opportunities for cybersecurity enhancement here as well now. So the short answer is that the infrastructure pipeline has never been stronger. Our priorities remain the same, certainly around areas such as the Western Sydney Aerotropolis. They are untouched, if anything, and it's been mentioned before. Now that we've achieved the funding for the Western Sydney Airport Metro line, a motorway standard access to the Western Sydney Airport as well, have the Aerotropolis land now to develop where a lot of foundation partners will be. We will move very, very swiftly over the next few years. I hope that answers it.
Thank you, Tim San. And look, that brings to the end the webinar tonight. Thank you so much, each and every one of you, for participating. I would like to commit, Consul General, we will talk to you and JCCI about this, to another webinar, perhaps in the September period in a few months' time. We think we'll have some more announcements at that time. And we are happy to come back with a further briefing of Japanese business. So thank you again. Good night to you all, and we wish you all safety to yourselves and to your families. Thank you very much.